I salute you from where you are, our candidates. You remember very well last time we had our lesson concerning vegetation in Africa. You remember we looked at very many things. One, we looked at the definition of vegetation. Two, we came and looked at the different types by explanation, that is natural vegetation and artificial vegetation. From there we try to look at the different examples of plants, examples of what we mean by natural and the plantation vegetation. We continued from there and tried to break down the different vegetation zones in Africa. And I remember that is where we ended. The list was very long. I remember we had looked at the equatorial or the tropical rainforest, we looked at the desert vegetation, we looked at the mangrove, we came and looked at the temperate, the desert, and many others. So for this lesson today, we want to continue from there and break it down and try to look at it one by one. We shall look at today what we term as the equatorial, or sometimes we term it as the tropical rain forest, as a type of vegetation. So now here we are going to break it down and look at specifically what the equatorial vegetation is, where it lies. We look at the different characteristics concerning this one. Why is it different from the rest of the other zones of vegetation in Africa? But remember, as I already said, that from our previous work of primary 5 and primary 4, some work of primary 6, we looked at this. So we are not going to differ so much from what we know, but we shall just remind ourselves and add in what we don't know. Therefore, when we come to look at our map showing the vegetation zones, from our notes that you will have, they will clearly show you where we have these different vegetation zones. So today we want to look at the equatorial or the tropical rainforest. Sometimes these two words confuse you. So when you come across this, it is the same with that. Therefore, don't get confused from here. Now, what is this equatorial vegetation or the tropical rainforest? We are saying that this equatorial vegetation lies in areas. You'll find that it lies in areas that receive. We can also use other words. You know, SST has very many words meaning the same thing. Receive or experience. Which experience high rainfall. But this high rainfall is always throughout the year. Throughout the year. Now, you will realize that there are some places in Africa, in Uganda and in East Africa that differ in the amount of rainfall received. Here we are saying with this one here, what we are terming as the tropical rainforest. I think you can even see the word rain, meaning that the area receives rainfall throughout the year, and this rainfall is in plenty. So here, what are we looking at? From the characteristics that we shall put down, you are going to realize that really these areas receive plenty of rainfall, and it is this rainfall that is making this type of vegetation to exist in the area where that we are going to put down here that receive this type of rainfall, that means that they also influence the presence of this type of vegetation. Now, we are saying the areas receive plenty of rainfall throughout the year. We shall compare this with other types of vegetation or the zones that we shall look at. Now, if we compare this one with the desert, you realize that in the desert, as we get there to look at it, it does not receive the rainfall that is compared to the equatorial. Therefore, now, with that, we want to look at what are these areas that receive this kind of rainfall that influences the existence of this type of vegetation. We shall begin with our place or our country, Uganda, where we know that these areas that receive, experience the equatorial vegetation, or where it exists. So in Uganda, we have areas around Lake Victoria. Areas around Lake Victoria in Uganda. Therefore, you can be asked a question that write down one place or area in Uganda that experiences the equatorial vegetation. So one of them is areas around Lake Victoria. Why are we saying so? We know that areas around Lake Victoria are influenced by that convectional rainfall because it is a water body. Therefore, this one here necessitates the growth or the existence of the equatorial or these tropical rainforests, because there is plenty of rainfall received around here because of the water body, which is Lake Victoria, which influences convectional rainfall. So this rainfall that is received around this area of ours in Uganda helps in the existence of the equatorial or the tropical rainforest, because we say these areas or this type here or zone has very many of these thick or dense forests that are growing. Then another part, we go now to other areas in Africa. We have countries like Gabon. We have another country like the Republic of Congo. We have the areas around West Africa, and then many other countries that we shall still come across. I can still look at another one, which is Nigeria, also experiences that. Other examples, I'm sure we shall get them. So now we are saying all these areas, the countries we have put down, Gabon, the Democratic Republic of Congo as examples, areas around West Africa, Nigeria, come to Uganda, we have areas around Lake Victoria. All those ones experience this for the reasons that the rainfall that is received, as we have said here, helps in the growth of these thick forests or vegetation. Now, you remember very well we looked at countries like this one when we're dealing with the climate. We looked at the Democratic Republic of Congo, we said it experiences a lot of rainfall throughout the year. Why? We gave examples, you remember the reasons. One, we looked at the presence of the thick vegetation around them, and the other one where we say it actually has a great deal of water, we can say sources or rivers that flow into the Indian Ocean also makes it to have plenty of the rainfall that is received. So that is that about that. Now, we can also try to get down to look at those other species. Sometimes people want to say types of trees that we find or that grow in the equatorial rainforest. The species or the types of trees that grow in the equatorial rainforest. Now, looking at this that we have already put down, when we look at these other different types or different vegetation zones, you will see that these ones differ from one another because of one, we can talk about the climate affects this as one of the factors that we shall look at. So we are saying that the trees that are growing in the equatorial vegetation or tropical rainforest are different from those other trees or species that grow in the other different vegetation zones, for the reasons that they experience different conditions that grow in that area. Now, what are these types? We know very well that most of these trees that are growing here, one, we know that they produce what we term as hardwood. So let's remind ourselves from primary 5 the types of trees that we find in the tropical rainforest. One, we have what we term as the mahogany. Another one is the mufule. Another one is the rosewood. I know you know these examples. Another one is the green heart. You can talk about what we term as the ebony and many others. So a question can come and they ask you, mention any 2 examples of the types of species of the trees that grow or we find in the equatorial or tropical rainforest. Be able to mention any of those ones. So the list is long, but we still, I'm saying we shall find all the work within our notes that we shall set. So those are the types. Then we have also to look at what makes this type of vegetation different from the rest of the other types of or the zones of vegetation that we have in Africa. And that's what we term as the characteristics. Characteristics of tropical rain forests. So this is where we are going. When we talk about characteristics, we are looking at those different aspects that will look at something, making it be the way it is or differ from other things. So here we are saying we have the different vegetation zones in Africa that we mentioned. Why are we saying that you may find that this equatorial or the tropical rainforest is different from the rest, like in the desert, the Mediterranean, talk about the mangrove and many others. Why are we saying they are different? One, what makes the tropical rainforest different from the rest of the vegetation zones is that when you look at the trees that are growing within this tropical rainforest, we are saying that they, one, have broad leaves. Why are we talking about the word broad? We can look at leaves that are big or wide or they are large. So when we say broad leaves, there are some other plants or trees that have got small leaves. And there is a reason for this. When we talk about having broad leaves, different from other types of vegetation we shall see, why are they broad? These ones here are helping in what we term as high transpiration. So they have a high transpiration rate. That's why they are broad, they are large. So you find others are small. And the reason for that is that they reduce the rate of transpiration. But because with this one here is experiencing the high or too much of the rainfall that is received, so they are able even to release that excess water through these large leaves. So that's why they have those ones. Then another one, we say they grow, always they grow into canopies. I don't know how I can explain this, but maybe let me use this example. For most of people, you know what an umbrella is. When you try to fold the umbrella, you will see that it is in this form. So you see that all these trees are growing into this shape here that we are terming as a canopy. This is how they grow. Okay? So we say canopies. And they are close to one another, these trees, forming what we term as also that they grow into thick, or I can say that they have a thick growth. A thick growth. What do we mean by this? A thick growth. What do we mean by that? We are saying that in this equatorial, the tropical rainforest, you see that under these other normal trees that are growing, on the ground we see very many other plants that are lying under these tall trees that are growing. So that's what we term as the undergrowth. It is too much and thick. So it is a characteristic to these forests that are called the tropical rainy forest. Another one is that besides this, they have buttress. They have buttressy roots. They have buttressy roots. So what do we mean by buttress? We are looking at the roots that are growing from the underground, from the surface, and they are big, very, very big roots that are developing from the main trunk. So we say they have those ones. Why they support them? They are able to support these trees that are growing. So we have so far those ones, and then maybe I can add on by saying that the trees are very tall. The trees are very tall, or they grow tall. What is the reason for this? It is just common sense that these trees, because they are thick and growing into canopies, they are competing for sunlight. So every time the tree is able to access that sunlight because from science you know that sunlight is very important as far as the manufacturing of food and many other issues to do with science and sunlight are concerned. You know that trees always tend to bend towards that because they need sunlight. So that's why they are competing to have this, at least get this sunshine within that area. So that's why they are always growing and growing very, very tall. Maybe the other point that we can also look at is that they are ever green. They are ever green. And why are they ever green? It is that most of them, when they try to shed off their leaves, they don't shed the leaves at the same time. So that's why they are ever green. Unlike some other climatic, vegetation zone that we shall see, that you find that these trees are able to shed off their leaves once in a year. So they shed off once. These ones, no, they are evergreen because they drop their leaves one by one. Why? Because they have the plenty of rainfall that is helping them every time to develop more new leaves on them. So they are evergreen. So here we have so far looked at why we term it as the equatorial rainforest, where it is received, examples of those countries and areas. We have written them down. If you want to look at some of the examples of the tree species that grow there, they are here. And we will say, all these ones, we can also put it there, is that the trees there produce hardwood. So all these ones here are producing hardwood as one of the characteristics of the tropical rainforest. Leaving that aside, we can also now come to look at this region here that we are talking about. We've looked at the trees that are there. We have looked at what it is. We have looked at all that. Now, what do you think are some of the human activities that are carried out in this, from this vegetation zone, the tropical rainforest or the equatorial vegetation? Now, looking at the trees here, that there are very many, it grows, it has very many trees growing. We expect to have some of the economic activities that are carried out within that area. So, next we need to explain something to do after looking at the characteristics of the tropical rainforest. Now I want to embark on this and look at the economic activities that are carried out in the tropical rainforest. Remember, I've said that tropical rainforest is the same as equatorial vegetation. So we are saying that looking at the nature of this type or this zone of vegetation, there are economic activities that are being carried out. Remember, economic activities, we said that this is the type of work that man carries out or does in order to meet his needs. So what is man carrying out in this tropical rainforest? So the nature of the type of vegetation gives or dictates the different economic activities that are being carried out in this region. So for the case of Uganda, we can also say that we know what we term as lumbering, and we have ever given this as one of the economic activities for those people who are living, for example, in areas on Lake Victoria, that is Alangara and Buvuma, because we have said that they are around. This one here is around the areas of Lake Victoria. So we experience this. There is lumbering as one of them. Two, there is tourism. Tourism. People, or most of people who have ever moved or toured around Uganda to see the different types or examples of forests that we have. For instance, I can mention Mabira. Many of you know where Mabira is. You are touring. And as an economic activity, there is somewhere where the government is gaining, at the same time you also gaining. Then we are saying that there is also what we term as the latex tapping. Now here people are going to ask me about this. What is latex? I know it is one of the questions that you are going to ask. Latex is actually a substance. Is a substance which is white in color. That is got from rubber trees. Rubber trees. So it is that white substance that is got from these rubber trees. Now, when we talk about tapping, so these people, this we assume it is a tree. So now there is tapping. They have their equipment that they use to cut. So as they cut, this sap will flow out. Sap will flow out, which is white in color. That is what is termed as the latex. So this latex is used in factories to manufacture rubber material or products. One of them are the tires that you use on your vehicles. You have the shoe soles, and many others. So anything, most of them that we have are got from this fiber, which is called the latex, and got out of the rubber trees. We shall have to look at some of these countries very soon where we have rubber growing or plantation farming, where we have people carrying out all these countries entirely depend on the growing of rubber. And this rubber is used to process the different products that are required, but from the latex that is tapped from these trees. So that is what we are terming as latex tapping. Then the other one is also farming. Why are we saying that farming is one of the major economic activities within this region? We are saying, or we remember very well, we say that the area receives a lot of rainfall throughout the year. So this rainfall here favors these people to carry out crop growing. I'm emphasizing here crop growing because we see that some of the other side of animal keeping becomes very difficult because of the thick vegetation around there. So the questions can be now that you write down, list, mention or give two economic activities carried out in the tropical rainforest or in the equatorial vegetation. We have mentioned one, lumbering. You know, lumbering is the cutting down of mature trees. We look at the word mature trees on a large scale for timber. So you get to know that lumbering is a bit different from deforestation. Here you are selective, but with deforestation you are not selective. So with lumbering, they look at mature trees and why they want timber. So it is an activity. I have said there are countries that depend on that. Then you have tourism, you know what it means. Then you have latex tapping, and then farming. So that is that. Maybe I can just try to get back and remind you of only 3 areas before I end. One, I can have these questions for digesting. One, we can try to flash back into our lesson and ask ourselves that why are trees in the tropical region? Why are trees in the tropical region? Why are trees in the tropical? This means the tropical rainforest. Tropical rainforest. Why do trees in the tropical rainforest grow tall? That is one question. Two, I can also pose another one from the characteristics that we have. That why do they, why are trees in the equatorial, when I talk about equatorial and tropical, they are the same, equatorial vegetation. Evergreen. That's another question. I have already talked about them. Then the third, or lastly, why do they have? Why do they have? Meaning the trees, broad leaves. Why do they have broad leaves? Those are three questions, but I have many of them. We'll find them within that work that we shall give you, accompanying the notes. But meanwhile, think about this. When we come to our notes and writing, you answer them. I think with that, we have come to the end of this lesson. I wish you well. Thank you for listening.